Hi, welcome to the Semiotic Eye, a podcast where you get to learn about all things semiotics. The following episodes will include conversations between Hamsini Shivkumar, India's leading semiotician and founder of Leapfrog Strategy Consulting, and Anurag Vesh, the founder of Mensa, a social media platform for audio sharing. The live audience listening to the conversations were allowed to interject and ask questions. Unfortunately, you won't be able to do the same here. However, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us on Leapfrog Strategy Consulting on LinkedIn. We hope this podcast is insightful to you and deepens your understanding of semiotics.
Just resuming the discussion that we had 2 Mondays ago, which was where we looked at what is, the whole role of interpretation in meaning making and how we cannot, there is no meaning without interpretation. And therefore, but are there some standards or is there a way to differentiate good interpretation from bad or better quality versus inferior quality in terms of interpretation? And we also looked at the holy grail of science, which is objectivity, which tries to see whether the interpreter can be 100 totally objective, has no emotions, no skin in the game, just looking at data with a completely sort of objective perspective, etc. And then we looked at that example of, even when the doctors, they might have looked at your medical records and got reading, but when they convey that reading to you, the patient, the way you receive it will inherently be subject to biases. So therefore, and you may read the number much more simply than the doctor does, because most people are not sophisticated statisticians. That's where we left the conversation, and you had pointed out like how many different types of cues people could read in order to decide about the doctor's, the data that the doctor is sharing or interpreting. So going forward from there, I gave some thought to what would be from my experience. So therefore, in semiotics and as semioticians, we don't aim for quote unquote objectivity as science would like to lead people to. We believe that all interpretation is inherently subjective. But having said that, how can we make the subject, through subjectivity, can we still achieve higher quality interpretation versus lesser quality interpretation? And for that, from my experience, these are the sort of criteria that I have arrived at for what to me is a higher quality or better quality interpretation of the same set of data. So for data for semiotician is what is being interpreted. Is it numbers? Is it visuals? Is it a written paragraph? Is it an essay? Is it a movie? Is it keywords? What is it that we are interpreting? Or is it even an event, right? Like, and there can be political events and we are interpreting events all the time. It can also be body language of people. So whatever we are interpreting, the first point for me is, what is the perspective or lens that you are applying to do your interpretation? And is that made explicit rather than left implicit? By which I mean, if you are an economist and you are looking at certain whatever is being interpreted, you will apply the economic lens. So for you, then the interpretation will be based on cost benefit analysis, trade-offs. So why do people do something and don't do something else? Or why did so and so say this or do this? You would, if you view that particular data point from an economic lens, then you would think in these terms. The frameworks you would use will be all economically driven, and you will think that the person is driven primarily by economic considerations, and therefore you would say, oh, okay, this is because of competition, this is because of cost benefit analysis, this is because of rational calculation and so on and so on. Whereas if you see that if you apply a lens of sociology, then you think in terms of social relationships. If you think in terms of cultural rules, you would then, come from a different perspective. If you think as a psychologist, then you would think in terms of motivation and other types of psychological mechanisms that operate and that could be at the root of whatever phenomena you are observing or whatever data point you are studying. So the first thing is you need to know what is the perspective or lens you are applying and then make that explicit rather than leave it implicit. The second is what is the end goal or purpose for which that interpretation is going to be used, because that agenda also very much governs good and bad interpretations, right? Well, or better quality or worse quality interpretation. So if you have, for example, a point to prove or an agenda to be achieved, then you would do a lot more selective cherry picking. You would string it together and connect it in slightly dubious ways where you may not think or look so rigorously at the evidence, but you would still, as long as you can construct a plausible story or a storyline out of it, you would be quite fine and you would push that point very hard. And we use metaphors and analogies extensively in our thinking. So what metaphor or analogy you pick and how valid you think it is also a question of your agenda and the end goal or purpose for which you are making the interpretation and building your case. So that is the second thing to note. As commercial semioticians, for us, this point about end goal or purpose comes into, okay, who's going to use this report? Is it people who are working in your communications agency? Is it people who are working in your design agency? Which team is going to use this? And therefore, how do we make it useful to that user? So we may interpret and come up with, let's say, 25 or 30 insights, but out of those, maybe only 5 would be really useful to a designer, whereas another set of 5 might be useful if I am, a creative person trying to think of a story. So therefore, that end goal or purpose for which the interpretation is going to be used is something one should be aware of. And the third, of course, linked to this end goal or purpose is everybody, when they interpret and then they communicate that interpretation, has some audience in mind. And, who is that audience and where is that audience coming from and where is the audience's interest in that interpretation coming from? So we will automatically tailor make the interpretation. So especially when it concerns power relations, this automatically happens, right? Like what the boss wants to hear. If so yes, you might interpret what is happening in certain ways, but if you want to convey a certain positive picture, which is what you believe the boss wants to hear, then you will find ways to interpret whatever you are looking at in a way that pleases the boss. So that who is the audience and what is their interest in the interpretation, where is that coming from, is also a third factor to be kept in mind when you're looking to see, okay, is that interpretation high quality or is it poor quality? Connected to the perspective or deriving from the perspective will be the frameworks and theories that you use to guide your interpretation. And even if you haven't formally studied anything, but you have your own understanding of human nature, human emotions, and, people's behavior all through your life. So then that quote unquote common sense will be the framework or theory that you use to guide your interpretation. Over and above all this, when we as commercial semioticians are looking at data points to be interpreted, a lot of the time they are visuals or they might be some written content or articles, posts, etc., and there are some keywords in those posts. There are certain concepts or ideas that are embedded in all of those, in all of the material that we look at. So we do, because our clients need to take action basis what we tell them. we do look for more, repetitive or repeated patterns rather than a one-off occurrence. Because a one-off occurrence can be just a random occurrence, it can be just something that's fleeting or trending. So we do look for something that is a more stable and lasting idea or a concept which is revealed through the repetition of that pattern, of that concept or idea, the repetition and recurrence of that concept or idea across multiple texts, multiple storylines. So if we are, for example, currently studying a cultural concept, let's say we are studying adventure and we are looking at 20 movies and some 10 web series and some 10 videos, travel and adventure videos, for example, 20 videos. So when we look at that kind of numbers and we are watching the videos and we are making note of all the key concepts that are embedded in these videos, we do look, so it's not counted, so it's more intuitive, but as you watch many, you do get a sense of, okay, this is a repetitive pattern, and here there are certain concepts that get repeated, or certain keywords that get repeated, or certain ideas that get repeated, certain kind of statements are made. So for example, if we are reading articles and material to do with women's safety in public spaces, and if you go to sites and content which has a strong feminist orientation, then the theories they use and the logic they use, etc., will derive very much from feminist theory, and it will use certain concepts. It will draw reference to certain ideas, etc. Whereas if you don't go into a feminist theory, but if you read something else, you will find a different perspective, a different lens, and a different angle on the same question of, let's say, women's safety in public spaces. So we look for that repetitive patterns. And again, because our work for clients is more from a marketing and consumer influence perspective, it's not an activist perspective. So we do take away that activist slant which may be there in the article or in that write-up or in that material. Or for example, in cinema, if you're watching, there is a commercial interest of the filmmaker to make the film successful, and therefore they may have certain scenes or they may do things in certain ways, etc. So we then try to keep aside those factors, because those factors are not relevant when what we are trying to understand is what is this text telling us about culture. So those, so we kind of keep aside many layers of interpretation that are possible if we were approaching it from a different angle or a different perspective. And we were, for example, if you're a film critic and you're trying to critique the film from a cinematic point of view, then you would observe and look and comment on very different things than if you looked at the same text, which is the film, but looked at it from a semiotic point of view and a cultural interpretive point of view. What you take as relevant signs and what is irrelevant, or even what layers of possible interpretation are relevant to you and what are irrelevant to you. Though of course you do need to debate it in the team to identify whether we are eliminating relevant things or not. Are they really irrelevant or not? How much weightage should be placed on on that particular approach or idea or interpretation or possible interpretation? So that brings me to the other point, which is therefore, like in our approach for high quality interpretation, we do actually work as a team. Different people look at different things, then we discuss and debate a lot, and then only we put forward and come to what we may call more firm conclusions from our interpretation, which we are then happy to present to the client as our insights from the material we have studied. So that's so that multiple eyes and discussion and debate is also, I think, relevant for arriving at a high quality interpretation. which can stand up to some questioning, and which even other people, if presented with the text and with the material and gone through it in a not identical way, no two eyes see identically, but they'd find it reasonable, yes, that you have drawn this inference or made this interpretation, or you have a different. So there are two ways in which we get to meaning. One is the connecting approach, where it's not so much about inferences but about joining dots to kind of take that intuitive leap to say, okay, this is the concept that is we can connect it, or which is connected to this, and hence this is an interesting thing to go after. So there is that connected approach, and then there is the causal approach, much more inferences and reasoning and causal reasoning based approach, which is what is typically the analytic approach that is used in the sciences. So we could interpret using either or both in arriving at what the insights that we get to. But that's whichever approach you use, you still need multiple eyes and some amount of discussion and debate to actually have some rigor into the interpretation and make sure that it's a high quality, or there is high quality of interpretation, which would then lead to also better insight, not just obvious things, but something that people, the users or the readers, might think, okay, I didn't think about it like this. Maybe it was hidden in plain sight, but you called it out, you pulled it out and showed me the significance of that which is hidden in plain sight, and therefore here's what you can do about it by way of action that you can take. Yeah, so that's really what I want to say on the topic. Would love to hear your thoughts, Anurag, and we have a little bit more time this time for a discussion.
Super. I was actually thinking parallelly, right, while you were talking about interpretations of, semiotic cues and kind of, upping the quality of that interpretation, right? I was thinking the kind of work we used to do with heuristics, right, for instance, which are also very universal, right? So one can look at a heuristic and say, every heuristic is relevant to every human in every situation, right? But that doesn't allow you to do anything with it, right? It's almost like saying, let humans survive on their own, right? As designers, we don't have a role to play, right? And that's when, you kind of do a trade-off between heuristics, right? Depending on context, depending on people's goals, depending on how, that heuristic would be interpreted in that particular context, how universal it may be, right? In that context and so on and so forth, right? And that is also judgment. It's not like quantitative research you're doing to say, out of million people, 999,000 people agree with me, right? It's more of a qualitative expert judgment to say, I think this heuristic applies better in this kind of a situation. And within that, the more you can correlate your interpretation to human goals in that context, to a fundamental cause-effect for a relationship, right? The higher the quality of your judgment, right? Literally, that you're making your judgment. So, I fully kind of, understand. But this is the same idea of quality of interpretation. It is not a consumer view, right? It's an expert view on how you interpret and therefore use that to either explain or influence something.
Yes. Because we do text interpretive semiotics, and that is therefore an expert view only. But it's not an expert opinion, because opinion, I am just opining on something from my experience, from my observation, from very many whatever, things that I have stored in my head. So it's not opinion, but it's expert interpretation, because it is based on these principles and the frameworks that we use, etc. So yes, so we are not reading voice of consumer feedback and then interpreting why consumers said what they said and what did they mean when they said what they said, which is what qualitative research does. But so we study consumer surround, as I like to call it. We don't study consumer voice, we study consumer surround. So what influences consumers?
That still makes a lot of sense, right? Because, even in our own space of behavioral sciences, that we had seen how, there were experiments run with, fMRI and so on and so forth, trying to study blood flow in the brain to make a judgment, right?
Yeah.
And in the end point,
Yeah.
we realized that our interpretations, if you have studied the science well enough, if you have honestly observed human behaviors, right, and we are interpreting, knowing our own biases, right, those interpretations are far richer than trying to objectively kind of create any measure of, interpretation, so to say. So,
Yeah. So actually, there are people working in this intersection of behavioral science and semiotics in some of the universities in the West. So one professor has come and presented at SemioFest also, where their experiments using the brain fMRI, etc., was to understand, like, when you present like visual metaphors, for example. So if you present stimuli of this nature versus connotative stimuli versus denotative stimuli, right? So like when something can only be that and nothing else. So factual stimuli versus this sort of more symbolic connotative stimuli where the field of interpretation can be much wider. And what happens, and is the brain response the same, is it different, which parts of the cortex and neocortex or whatever, where does it go from, and so on and so on. So there are actually some fascinating experimental
and what's your view on it?
I haven't read the study report, so it's hard to have a view. My only thing is it comes back to this, right? Okay, I see graphs and I see charts. There's some metric and, or this right side of the brain flashes for X seconds. But after that, you have to interpret it. No. So what does it mean when only this side flashes and it goes for only 0.2 seconds versus it goes for 2 or 30 seconds? That difference, if you don't know, then how do you interpret? So what you said, then the judgment comes in on what's the significance of 0.2 seconds versus 2 seconds for a certain kind of stimulus and which part of the brain it activates. So that really does become the challenge. And then how creative do you go in explaining it? Then you will be in metaphors to make it attractive to people. So we are back in the same loop, essentially.
Very nice session.
Yes.
Very well informed. Oh, I can see. I never looked at the phone itself. So, Raj, 14 seconds, you say something. Otherwise, next week we'll make sure that you have enough time to comment here.
Oh, next week I will be speak. Okay, only 7 seconds is there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to The Semiotic Eye. Please stay tuned for more episodes of this podcast. And if you want to learn more about semiotics, please go to our website, leapfrogstrategy.com, and access our learning center to start your semiotic journey. Bye.